Hey, everybody, welcome to the BA Zones pre-show. We've got 1 minute before we go live. We're never too late. We're always right on time. We only have a minute, a very short pre-show going on tonight. Hope everybody's doing well. Tonight we're going to be talking about data dictionaries. So it should be a fun topic, and please stick around for that. Hopefully everybody's weather. I am so broken before we go live. I am so broken. I've had heating pads and all types of things on me. We've had another 9 inches of snow, not horrific tornadoes or anything, but it has taken its toll, and I'm really done with the winter now. I love all the four seasons, but my body needs spring now. And I think it's only like 19 days to spring. So I can't wait at this point. Anyway, it is 8 o'clock and it is time for the BA Zone. Welcome, everybody. I hope everybody's having a terrific night. Happy to have everybody here. Tonight, we're going to be talking about data dictionaries, how to create them and the best practices around them. I'm Marianne Morrison, and Kathleen Sinnott is in the production booth. And together we are the BA Zone. And again, if you find the importance of data dictionaries and incorporating best practices, using them will make it easier, to maintain and update and share data. And speaking of sharing, if you know anyone who might be interested in tonight's topic, or maybe they just want to hang out with us, go ahead and tag them, but don't drag them because that's not legal. Everybody is welcome. And as always, questions or comments during the show are welcome, so don't be shy. Jump right in. And if you're watching on a replay, you can always send us in comments or questions, and we'll be happy to get back to you and provide you any type of help that we can. Okay, here we go. So sit back, relax, take a deep breath, open your mind while Kathleen plays our soothing intro. Kathleen? Okay, and I'm not sure how soothing that was. It's sort of more disco involved, but okay, data dictionaries. There are certain cornerstone business analyst artifacts or documents that are absolutely necessary to the success of a project, and the data dictionary is one of those documents. Data dictionary is a repository of every data field or element of an application or multiple applications within your organization. It provides data definition in business terms and defines their purpose and their attributes, whether that be, the format, the length of a field, the behavior of a field, data type, required fields, acceptable values, dependencies, etc. So data dictionaries are not glossaries. Glossaries contain terms, acronyms, and definitions. And although a data dictionary has a standard structure, depending on your role, it can mean different things to different people. Or it may have additional elements attached to it. So, for example, if you're talking to a developer or a DBA, a database administrator, they may think that it includes the back-end database fields, names, and tables. And it could, but tonight we're just going to focus and talk about the front-end data dictionary and how it provides the roadmap for the back-end database and for developers and QA to have a standard sort of structure so that everybody's working towards the same goal and everybody knows what they're talking about. So what are some of the benefits of creating and maintaining this data dictionary? So our top five, in no particular order, never is in any type of order with us, but anyway, it's not in any particular order. A data dictionary will improve consistency. Now, how often have we talked about consistency? We are always talking about consistency because it's one of the key points of a business analyst. That's one of our things that we strive for is consistency. It'll provide you with consistent data labeling, data capture, and use across one or more applications or pages within an application. I don't know how many times you've maybe gotten into a new job and looked at an application and saw the name of one data field is named something different on 2 pages later or something, and it's actually the same data element, just named inconsistently. So in improving consistency, the results then, you're going to get higher quality of data that is measurable, meaningful, and easier to analyze, better reporting capabilities and analysis. Sometimes you're comparing apples to oranges instead of apples to apples because of the inconsistencies. And the bottom line is it's going to be success of the business is dependent on this timely and accurate data. It's all about data. It always comes down to data. Data and money, those are the two big drivers, right? Another thing that a data dictionary will give you is that it reduces redundancy. A rose is a rose. A rose by any other name is still a rose. That's the quote, right? Redundant data capture, it increases operational inefficiencies. So again, that two fields meaning the same thing. I mean, you could have, for example, in a healthcare application, you could be collecting physician data. And in one place, it could be called provider name. It could be called physician name. It could be called prescriber name. It could be called MD name. So there's all these variations. It is the doctor's name, but they call it 4 or 5 different types of things. So it reduces that type of redundancy throughout your application and your data capture. It is absolutely, a data dictionary is absolutely essential if you're going to do any type of data transmission or data sharing, file feeds coming in, going out. In order to transfer data between entities or systems, you have to understand the relationship and what maps to what. So you absolutely have to have one if you're doing any kind of data. And most of us are. We're taking in data and we're outputting data and outcomes, et cetera. So it will also, a data dictionary will also improve your requirements. How you say? I will tell you how. The layout of a data dictionary allows the BA to go in, and we're doing this typically, if you're not doing it in any kind of software, you're doing this in sort of a spreadsheet, where all the columns, headers are labeled across the top and all your data is beneath that. So that enables a BA to sort by the elements to determine the impact of a new feature or enhancement going in, adding a new data field. Where does it fit in? Does it fit into this particular group? Is it already there? Et cetera. So it ensures that your requirements are also complete. So you're going to be looking for, relevant elements, or is anything missing? So it gives you that completeness. It's like, I got to look over here, see what we currently have, and then make sure we're adding appropriately or not displaying appropriately. And it ensures that whatever is being built is going to be built on a solid foundation, that the developers know exactly what you're talking about when you're putting that requirement in. I mean, it's really powerful in that case in improving our requirements. And again, it's one of those cornerstone documents, right? Data dictionaries, the fifth and final point that we'll just talk about here, is that it provides a blueprint and a communication tool between teams. Another high priority is that we have to have the ability to communicate. We have to be talking the same language. Otherwise, nothing gets done. So from a cross-functional business teams, they get to agree on the data elements and the business logic associated with those business elements. So we're all going towards the same goal. It also provides a blueprint for the building and the maintenance of the back-end database. Developers depend on it, so they don't reinvent the wheel, with 10 spokes instead of the 2 that they need. And for QA, it provides accurate and complete testing to understand all those elements and how they work on the front end, how they save to the back end, how they redisplay on the front end, et cetera. So those are the 5 benefits. And I'm sure you can come up with a ton of other benefits for a data dictionary. And our show wouldn't be complete if we didn't take a few seconds right now, take a little break to welcome all of our newcomers and invite everyone to sign up for our mailing list so you can be the first one to find out about upcoming events, classes, and free stuff. We collect minimal information and we don't share that information with anyone. We just have the sole purpose of providing our subscribers with information. So just go to thebazone.com and join our community and help us make it a place where we can share our experiences and give each other a hand. This kind of hand and, a helping hand too, because that's what it's all about. Okay, so let me just double check, make sure that we're good to go here. Okay. Just double checking with Kathleen, see what she's doing in the back end. I always check up on her periodically. Okay, so we've sort of reviewed what a data dictionary is and the benefits of using one. So let's take a look at some slides that outline the types of scenarios where we would be creating or using data dictionaries and how we would go about creating one. So Kathleen, we have a question, Kathleen. Let's see. Can you put that up on the lower third, Kathleen? Give her a second to do that. So, who will create this data dictionary? Okay, the BA creates this data dictionary. Now, again, you may have DBAs, database administrators. This is Saif. I'm sorry, Saif, I'm on. Business analysts, we create data dictionaries from the front, specifically around the front end data elements. Sometimes we'll work with developers on the back end to create back end tables and fields, but typically they pretty much do that piece themselves, and they may have their own type of document for that. But if we're talking about a new application or ensuring that what is on the back end makes sense with the front end, we have to document the front end. And if the system is already there, Saif, I would just go through it page by page and document all the elements, the format of those elements, and we'll show you how to do that getting into it. But you definitely want to do that. As a junior BA, when I used to manage people, the first thing a new BA came in, a junior BA, I would have them document an application. We went through a lot of mergers and acquisitions, so we had a lot of applications to document. But that is the best way for a business analyst to understand how the system works. Even if you're creating training manuals, you need this information. It's a fantastic piece of information to have. Highly recommend that you do it. Even if the DBAs or the database administrators already have one, do one for yourself on the front end. You won't regret it, and you can use it in future documentation. Okay? Hi, Hickam. Hi, guys. You are doing a great job. I keep learning from you every day. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. And again, any of you folks, if you have any questions out there, please go to the BA Zone. If you have any ideas for future shows, we love to help everybody out. So I'm glad you're enjoying the show. Okay, so let us go to the slides, Kathleen. If we have no other questions, I'll check back in a little while. We'll go to the slides right now and show you how to create it and how you. Okay, nice title slide. Okay, data dictionary uses. So as we were asking before, who would do this? Why would you do this? Say you need to document a legacy application. This happens a lot to business analysts. You go into a job, maybe the BAs that were there before are no longer there. There's no documentation. Guys on the back end may have some information, but probably not a whole lot. And you need to document the legacy application. So this is where you would create a data dictionary. And again, we'll show you how to lay that out on the next slides. But you'd want to go in and document that legacy application, the as-is application, how it works, what are all the fields, an explanation of the fields, and it may take a little digging to find out what some of these fields mean or some of these fields reference in the application. And again, you're looking, once you get that all laid out, you're looking for redundancies and duplications of efforts. If you had to update the legacy application, again, you have nothing to compare it to. unless you have a data dictionary. You're sort of guessing the impact of adding a field or taking away a field and what that will impact 4 pages down or 4 processes down. Without that data dictionary, you have no idea. So, it could break reports, it could break dashboards, it could break a lot of things down the line if you don't have that mapped out. So, you definitely want to do that. If you get the chance to document a brandy new application, something that is hot off the presses, brand spanking new, in this instance, you may have the opportunity to work with back-end database administrators to maybe suggest field names that sort of are meaningful because they look like the field names on the front end. A lot of times you'll have a really relevant, meaningful front end word or term, and they take for a field, and then they take that and they create some kind of craziness, and nobody can ever find it again in the back end. So for a brand new application, you may get that opportunity to suggest that, or at least work with the back end folks to make sure that that is more manageable. But there again, if you're a brand spanking new product, you definitely want to create a data dictionary so that in adding new features, you're always updating and taking care of it. Another use is when you're merging applications. We live in a time where mergers and acquisitions are the way you get to be number one. You buy number one spot. You buy out the next company. You may buy it out for their technology, for their personnel, whatever the reason might be. The bottom line is somebody has to look at those 2 software applications, 3 or 4, depending on if they have suites of products, right? And you have to decide which is the best in breed. Or do we create a brand new application by taking the best of both applications? Or do you take a field from the new application and move it to your existing, or vice versa? The only way you can do that is if you actually map out in a data dictionary the application that you have, the application that you're acquiring, and then do an analysis, which is really fun, I have to say, as a business analyst. Do an analysis and say, you know what, this seems to work best. Let's create a whole brandy new one, which we've done many times. So those are sort of some of the instances where you would want to create this data dictionary. So if I haven't impressed on you why you should do it, these are some of the reasons why you definitely want to do it. So let's talk about now, getting into it, how we lay it out. Now, there are many fields that you could put into a data dictionary, and I'm going to go over some of the standard ones. And again, I could think of maybe 4 or 5 additional ones that you might add, but these would suffice for just about anything. And again, you're going to want to create this in some type of a spreadsheet so that you can sort different fields. And I'm just labeling, these would be your column headers. And then you would fill in the data beneath the column headers. So your first column, you would create an element ID. Now I call this element ID. In data dictionaries, you may find that sometimes it's labeled field name, but it's not always a field. So we like to use element instead of field. An element could be a field, it could be a variable, or it could be some type of attribute, right? So we're going to use element through this, but just know that you could use field name or whatever you'd like to, as long as it's consistent, right? Just keep it consistent. So you want to create a unique ID for each data element. So if you're looking at a page on an application, for example, and you're looking at maybe a patient demographic information, you have patient name, date of birth, their home address, etc. You want to create a unique ID for each one of those elements. So patient name would be 001. Patient date of birth might be 005. Street address 010. And you notice that I'm making some big jumps in five measurements of 5 increments, right? You could do it in 2 or whatever. And that's because you may add different elements as you go along. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, give yourself a little room to add different fields somewhere down the line that you might want to add. So that would be that unique field. And that way you can map everything from that unique ID. The next thing would be an element name, and this would be your unique name for each element. And when we're talking about a name versus a label, I'm going to use address as an example. So, address, for example, street address, street address number one. Sometimes you have street address number two. An address is an address, and it's laid out the same way, whether it's a patient address, a physician address, a a hospital address. Um, they're addresses, and if you're in the United States, the address consists of address line number one, which is a street address. Address number two, which could be apartment number, suite number, that's address number two, your city, state, and your zip. And your zip can be 4 to, what is it, 5 to 8, 5 to 10 characters with a dash separating them. Obviously, addresses in different countries are going to be different, but they're going to be consistent for that country. So the element name itself is address. Element labels are, you can have the patient address, the physician address, depending where you are in the application. So you can group everything under this is an address, and these are the different types of addresses. Okay. So Kathleen, if you want to just flip to the next one. Okay. Once you have that element name or that element label, excuse me, you're going to want to give a description of that element, and how it is associated with the element name, like street address number one. So you say, okay, description, address is street address number one. If this were a type of field that was based on a calculation, you could say that this is like total purchase order, and it is derived by taking unit price times quantity to get total purchase order or total purchase price. So you could put that calculation in there as well as a description. So it's an opportunity to explain the use of that particular field or element and give it a standardized description so that everybody understands what it means. And a lot of times you'll work with the business on this and the back end if it's already been established, right? From there, you want to list what type the data element is, and usually I'm talking about control type. So, is this particular element on the page a radio button? Is it a checkbox, an input field, a static text, a drop-down list, etc.? And you put that one little, radio button. That's what it is, and move on to your next field. Your next field is format. There may not always be something in format. It's only there when you need it. So, for example, if the type is an input field, and it's a date or a calendar, the format might be month, month, day, day, year, 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 or day, day, month, month, year, year if you're European, or the format may be currency. So you're telling the guys in the back end how this should display and how it should be captured in the back end, displayed in the front end, captured in the back end. And it's formatting issues. Maybe you want to apply a telephone mask, which is, the parentheses for the area code and the dashes in between the actual phone number. So apply the telephone mask. It's a telephone number. So that is a format. And you can list that all in that column. Okay. Next slide, Kath. Okay. Data type. Now, this indicates how the data will be stored in the back end. So should it be only numbers, numeric? It's always numeric. Does it contain alphabet, characters and numeric? Is it alphanumeric? You might see varchar in there, or char, or integer. These are different ways of storing the data. So in that way, you can tell the backend guys what they need to do. That this should only accept numbers. This should accept numbers and alphabet. The next column in your list will be length, a minimum and a maximum length, which is basically the size of the field or the element, an input field typically, or if it's It could even be a drop down, the longest drop down character list. So you can say that it's a minimum of 2 characters need to be entered and a maximum of 50, etc. So it's just that minimum maximum. The values column would be any acceptable values for that particular element. So if you're talking like a drop down list or a checkbox, you can actually list all of the options that the user could select from. Um, and you want to do that however you want that laid out alphabetically. I recommend that however you put it in there is the way you want to see it on the front end, because developers will just type it in. But you can actually add comments, in ascending or descending order. But I recommend that if you have options, make them bullets and make them alphabetical if that's what you want to do. However you see them, that's the way you want to enter them, because guaranteed that's the way they're going to be put in, even though you say ascending, descending somewhere else. So just be aware of that. Okay, Kath. Okay, next column would be a required, usually abbreviated by REQD, and the responses are usually Y or N, yes or no. But it indicates whether the user is required to answer or address a particular element. Not everything is required, but if you need a date of birth from a person in order to validate something, then you have to require that they enter that in, and you just have to indicate. And again, it indicates when they're building it to the developers that this is a required field that's necessary. Accepts a null value. This is one that we use sometimes, and sometimes we don't, but it indicates whether an element can be empty, completely empty, as in nothing in there, and it's a yes or no. We want to let them know that too on the back end. And then any kind of validation rules, specific rules that are associated with the element. So an example here is a value must be greater than 0 or less than or equal to 50. So any type of specific rules that you can't fit anywhere else that would validate this particular information, that's where you would list in that column. Okay, Kath? Okay, and then the last bunch of things are dependencies. So dependencies indicate that the particular element that you're on may be dependent on the response or value or existence of another element. So, for example, if you respond yes to element 0, a yes response to element ID 013, then this particular element may display. So those are sort of the dependencies, and you want to track those. That's really important if you're documenting forms where you have a lot of questions and you're jumping from one question, you're branching logic from one question response, and you go down another branch of a set of questions versus answering, no, and going down a separate branch. So these are sort of dependencies. That's a good example of where you would use dependencies. You can use them anywhere, though, that, a calculation result may be dependent on calculating this ID and this ID together type of thing. So your last two columns are, if you can provide examples always give people clarity. So if you can provide an example, a little example, you would put it in that column. And then, of course, you always have the comments, for those rude comments. No, I don't mean rude, but it's provide any other significant details in that, that doesn't quite fit into anything else. These are sort of the standard data dictionary columns that you'll see most often. Are there other ones? Yeah, sure, there are other ones. You can use them or not. But these are the ones that will get you basically what you need as far as that goes. So that about wraps up those slides. So just as one last slide, if Kathleen could just put up, Kathleen, if you could just put up the slide where everybody can find us. .com. We're on Twitter at the BA Zone. on Instagram.com, the BA Zone, Periscope TV, the BA Zone, Facebook.com, the BA Zone, and YouTube, thebazone.com. And well, hello. Tony is watching from Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome, Tony. I bet it's a heck of a lot warmer down in Atlanta right now than it is here. It's freezing up here. But welcome. Okay, so I hope tonight's show has shed some light on the importance of creating and maintaining a data dictionary. And although it might be a little painful or time-consuming to create one, it will absolutely streamline the BA process, the development process, QA process, onboarding of new people, mergers and acquisitions, reporting and analysis, and it will ensure that the business is getting the data that it needs. And you can make it happen. And we want to help you make that happen. And let's go, one last thing. Let's just review. Kathleen is reminding me. Best practices. I jumped over to too soon. So, best practices as far as creating a data dictionary. You want to apply data standards. Data standards are basically rules that govern the way data is collected, recorded, and represented. You want to, and some of those things, we've just outlined a couple. You want to use standard naming conventions. You're going to set it up a certain way. You're going to use meaningful labels and descriptions. Please don't use acronyms or unless everybody knows the acronym and everybody agrees to it. But somewhere down the line, you're going to have a problem with an acronym in that people forget what the acronym originally meant if you don't have a data dictionary, for sure, because we're running into some of those problems right now. But it's better to make it crystal clear as to what a particular field means, unless it's just an industry-wide type of thing and everybody knows and understands. Like, for example, healthcare, BP is blood pressure pretty much everywhere, right? So in those type of things, you can use that, but try to stay away from abbreviations, acronyms, create meaningful labels and descriptions. And you also want to document the source of data, and you can do this in the comments field. A lot of times it's when it's a user entered data field because of the rest of the data dictionary columns. But sometimes you're not aware that it may be a file feed that's giving you this information or a calculation. We were talking about that before. So you definitely want to document the source at an elemental level if it's not obvious. And even sometimes if it is obvious, because it's not always obvious to everybody else. So those are just a few of the best practices and standards, and you can go out there. It's sort of a whole other class on standards and practices for database and design. There's standards everywhere. So we just listed a couple of them for you. So I almost skipped that. So thanks, Kathleen, for putting that in. So I think that's about it. That wraps up our night. And 8:32, we did go just a little bit long. I just want to check we're okay, Kathleen. We're good out there. Okay, terrific. Okay, so that about wraps up tonight. So from Kathleen and I, have a great night, everybody. And we'll see you next Tuesday on the BA Zone Live. Take care, everyone.